Hey everyone, we are back for the third video of the first day of the Delphi hearings from July 30th that took place in the Carroll County Courthouse. If you've been watching this live, then you've already seen the first two motions of the day, and this is the third one that wrapped up the first day, which is the motion to dismiss. And it's by far the, I think, was probably the most time consuming and interesting of the three from the first day. I'm not sure if you would agree with that or not, Turbo.
Yeah,
But
I do actually.
you know, I think
On that day.
even at 1:26 when this hearing started, I think that we had all been at the courthouse long enough. We were it had felt like a full day already. But
Yeah, we'd only been in for, isn't this the first day still? We'd only been in for a couple hours.
2 hours, 2.5 hours.
It felt like a lot. We were getting acclimatized.
That was only 1/10 of the time we were in there.
Oh,
So,
well,
and like we had mentioned before that, when they came back from lunch, they did readdress two things from the previous motion to compel for sanctions. But then they went right into the motion to dismiss. And I have a quote that Goal said here called "I am a fact finder." And
Gull said that?
yes, Goal said "I am the fact finder."
Nice.
I think it might have been after Nick found those things that the defense was looking for from the previous hearing. And then I said,
So did you have notes on those? Or no?
all it had said when they came back from lunch and Nick asked to reopen the motion to compel for sanctions, all I have is that he asked to reopen it, and that he'd spent his lunch finding and brought in two new exhibits that Rosie had asked for, and then they thanked him for spending his lunch doing that. But it was basically, I think, Nick's way of being like, no, I mean, look, you said you didn't have this, and yet here it was, so.
Yeah, and he did mention the supplemental report number 118 with
Right.
the second and third pages, and then the second round of the Google searches. And Nick said that he had the discovery receipt signed for by the defense January 30th, 2024, which is when the defense was just back on the case. Now, he did make a point of saying, I do believe they had them before that, but they did get them. They just couldn't find them.
Right.
And then OJ said, well, it's very kind of Nick to find over his lunch hour for us.
And there was the element also of the when there were the interim attorneys, Scrimmon and Librado.
Yeah.
Like they had been handed over all of the when Baldwin and Rosie returned the discovery, it was then handed over to Scrimmon and Librado. They then had to hand it back over to law enforcement, and then so who knows what state of disarrayment things might have been in at that point. So maybe it did make it more difficult for them to find things, but but again, we're here to talk about the motion to dismiss now. So,
who said the rules of evidence are pretty loose in motions as opposed to a trial?
my grandmother said that about a few girls I went to high school with.
Oh. Okay, well, I know that Baldwin come along and introduced the packet. He had a packet, Exhibit E, which contains
the packets.
the packets.
Is this where we talked about Jay Abbott and Doug Potter?
It is, and this is where we got into a bit of theatrics.
Well, so when they started the hearing for the dismissal, I'm trying to remember because I have my notes here, but they did they kind of do a little opening statement for it? Because the first 2 pages of my notes with this this hearing are basically just statements by the attorneys.
Yeah, that's right. Yep,
So
that's
before
correct.
they
Yep,
got to any of the witnesses, they just
yep.
kind of did their own little
Yes, they
opening
did.
statements. Okay.
You bet. Yep.
And this is where this was really the first time Baldwin took charge,
Mhm.
and kind of led the team. But they brought up this thing about Jay Abbott and Doug Carter
Yeah.
emailing concerning
Mhm.
the early development in the case.
Yeah, very early.
Um,
February 17th, 2017
the,
at 7:02 PM.
yeah, the quote I have says, "Since finding the bodies last Tuesday, we
Yeah.
have exhausted every lead possible and utilized every resource."
Excuse me. Mhm.
And then Baldwin goes into that, he had pulled out was this when he pulled out the packets and he had 6 of the
Yes.
101 phone extraction. Um,
Well, just before you get into that,
yeah.
the email between Massa, FBI agent Massa, who we did hear about at that, hear from at that original presser with David Bernston. I want to say it was February 22nd is where we first got to see him. But on the 17th, there was this email also with him. It wasn't just FBI agent Jay Abbott. It was also this email from Massa to Carter. And it
Mm-hmm.
was within 48 hours, they had 1 to 4 suspect interviews, several search warrants. And then they talked about suspect number 6.
Oh yeah, Massa. Sorry.
Yeah, what did I say? I think I said Massa.
No, I think you did. Yeah, because that
Mm,
was the very first presser, I believe, when he talked about,
yeah,
do you know anyone that missed work? Do you know
right.
anyone that behaved
Right, yeah,
differently?
I was kind of reminding everyone of where we first seen him, but prior to, because that was, the 22nd of February, but on the 17th, they had
Mm,
this email, and it was I think it was I do believe it was the 22nd.
might be.
So suspect number 6, they worked hard on that person, and they had ties to Holder. And there was something said about the crime scene pictures with the BAU and what may be pagan rituals. Quote.
Okay.
I quoted that. And then to your point, back to Abbott and Carter, as of right now, through tonight, we've exhausted all leads and utilized all resources. And then Baldwin entered Exhibit F, which is all the phone extractions that the state had extracted in alphabetical order.
Right.
Luttrell had no objections to E and F, and then we had the young intern.
Right. And can we talk about the visual demonstration that Baldwin
Yes,
gave for the
certainly.
courtroom at this moment? Because I personally, I don't think it landed the way that, I mean, all I kept imagining was some poor intern like Xerox copying every one of those pages
Yeah.
just for this 30 seconds of effect that they did not seem to get.
It was quite clear that he had rehearsed that several
Oh yeah,
times.
he was trying to have a impactful moment there.
And how tall were the paper stacks, Aspen?
Well, I believe if I remember properly, I would have to say that those were 1 foot tall and approximately 4 inches thick. Am I correct in that?
It's close.
Okay.
Yeah, I had 1.5 feet high and 2 stacks that were one
Yes,
one
two steps.
foot tall, and the binders were 4 inches tall.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, 4 inch
That's what
binders.
I
I apologize.
estimated.
I'm trying to read my note there. 4 inch binders. You're right.
Yeah.
That's Exhibit F.
And he,
Um,
and he had the trolley cart, and he brought it through the well, and he staged everything just properly and lined it all up in front of the defense on the table.
just
And
smacked it
and
all
then
down there.
and then Judge Gall says, "Is there any significance to this?" I actually have no.
It was in
I
that moment. It was in that moment that I knew that this defense team is not gone green.
wrote
I mean, they're spending 12,000 on their way to Georgia, and they're spending 2,000 on copy paper. But they did have a point to why they were doing it.
Yeah, they did. And they get into that point a little bit later. But before we get to that, Baldwin specifically said he wanted to enter Exhibit G and to request that Judge Gall pay attention to the first motion to dismiss, the videotaped over memorialized reproduction of that interview, and the exhibit in the first motion to dismiss.
Yes.
So I guess that's going back to 23, is it? 2023? I don't know. Can't quite remember at this point.
Right. And that's when my notes go right into basically the first statement where they talk about Holder believed he had only met Abby one time.
Yeah. And
that Logan and Abby went to different schools.
Right.
Then we were told about the August 30th, 2023 interview with Holder, which I thought was actually probably one of the things I was most looking forward to, because when I saw the TV up there, and I was like, okay, we have a TV in the front.
Interaction. Yeah.
That means we're going to get to watch some video, and of course, we were all probably hoping it was like the full BG video or something, but no, it turns out it was a 1-minute clip from the Brad Holder interview that he sat down with Special Agent, and I apparently missed the name on this because it just says Special Agent.
Adam Cole. I have Special Agent Adam Cole with a K, and Sergeant Christopher Goatee or Goat.
I think you're right.
No, that might have been the interview with Holder. I think I'm mistaken on that.
Well, no, Holder interview. The one we watched.
No, that is it.
From 5:15 to 6:46. It was Special Agent who?
Yeah. Cole. Adam Cole with a K.
Okay.
And the one little point, Holder had also stated that he thought that Abby had only met Logan once.
Right.
So I only have one takeaway from that 1-minute clip.
What was it?
Holder said twice, "Don't quote me on that."
He did. What do you think about his body language in that interview? Because I mean, I get it. It was years later, so I mean, it's 2023. And like let's hypothesize that Brad Holder is this mastermind. Like this mastermind sadistic killer. And he's taunting everyone on his social media platforms for years. Did you see a man sitting in that room that was scared, or that was hiding something, or that was that felt like he was in danger? Or did you see a guy that was just annoyed by this constant thing that keeps coming back around? Possibly, partially because of his own actions, but
I have to be honest, the only thing that I looked up for on that video was to note that he had on a black shirt and khaki shorts. I was too busy scrolling and trying to estimate how long the interview was overall compared to the little 1-minute clip that they had. I figured it was over an hour of the deposition. No. I did not make any observations on the Grandmaster.
I mean, if you don't
third party
stop and look around every once in a while, the world just passes by.
Yeah,
I know.
I've got other observations.
So I then have in here that, and I'm not sure who said it, but it says witness statements can differ from year to year, which is true. Yeah. I mean, like if you ask me, what I did for my birthday last year, I could be like, oh well, I did this. And then if you ask me a year later what I did 2 years ago on my birthday, I might have some of the,
Oh yeah.
But there might be little things like, was I wearing a sweatshirt or a hoodie? But
Yeah, no, it's not.
That's why I don't put the weight into witness statements that some people do. Like,
Yeah.
like how can one juvenile say this and one juvenile say that, and
Right.
Betsy Blair say this and Sarah Carborough say this, because they're witnesses
I have,
and they're
yeah,
notoriously
of course.
going to say different things.
Yeah.
It's more suspicious when they all say the exact same thing.
Oh gosh, yeah. 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 So I've got May 2nd, 2024 for a deposition.
Yes.
Pages 19 to 21.
Yes.
Baldwin mentions there's relevant parts to consider for the record. How many times did you meet Abby? Those 2 times, twice.
Right. When you
And
skip
then,
in 2023, he said that in 20 they had met under supervised
mhm.
meetings a few times, and then on May 2nd, 2024, you said they'd met 2 times, and that Patrick Westfall saw her in Logan too.
Yep, they were near Westfall's house. There was a little park on the Erie Canal.
And Patrick Westfall has denied that, by the way. Just
Oh,
he has absolutely denied that.
really? Huh. Well, he said he chaperoned them. They chaperoned them. That Logan and Abby walked away and they were in view.
Right. So what's your takeaway on that? Some people literally use that as like the smoking gun that convinces them that Brad Holder is guilty, that he changed the number of times that he met Abby.
Yeah, no, it's I have no I I wouldn't expect people to remember how many times they met
Right.
their son's friend. Like, I mean, it would be, there's no evidence that ties him to the crime. He wasn't even in Delphi that day. I mean, all of
Right.
this is,
And you
I
have,
mean,
if you have, if
not.
you have a son, and if you have a son or daughter,
Yes.
if you meet their
I
friend
couldn't.
or boy,
No.
how many times do you have to meet one of their friends before you actually take notice of the person?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because they're coming and going. Like, teenagers have multiple friends coming and going from different crowds and this and that. Like, I
And
mean,
let's be honest, if one of them gets murdered,
yeah,
it's going to incite the importance of like kind of remembering
yeah,
your experiences with that person. So right off the bat, when he was interviewed on the 17th, I can see where he might have been like, I don't think I ever met her, or I don't think they ever
yeah,
hung out because they were at different schools. But then after he's like, okay, yeah, no, Logan told me I did meet her once.
right.
you know
Yeah, I mean,
that to
it's
me has
because he has
never been an issue.
recollections. Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't hold any weight with me at all, to be honest. I mean, it's just human nature, and it certainly doesn't mean that he's hiding. I mean, show me the evidence, because what is that? That's not evidence to me. It's,
Right.
it's not evidence of anything at all.
I've introduced myself to people multiple times that I've met more than a handful of times.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I instantly remember after the
Happened to me.
after I'm
Yeah.
absolutely mortified and embarrassed by it.
Yeah. I just had that happen tonight, in fact. I introduced myself and said, "It's nice to meet you." And she said, "Oh, we were we we've talked before here and there and there." I was like, "Oh." I sincerely didn't remember it.
Say it, yeah.
It's mortifying. But
And
like,
of course it is, but it's also human nature.
yeah.
Um, so I have at this point, and I don't know if I'm going too fast or skipping anything that you have, but I did have a note that after, like during the testimony about, about Holder or whatever, which Richard Allen, I thought one of the things I thought was really interesting with him is, he was very engaged and, looking around and engaged, as he listened to everything. But when they talked about any of the Odinists, where they talked about any of when they talked about anyone but him,
Yeah.
he
Didn't care.
his interest level plummeted.
Yep.
He was like looking back, glaring, looking at people, looking back at Kathy and Janice. It was, really when they talked about Richard, that he was tuned in. But I did notice that one point during this testimony that he had his hand on his face, and it was trembling, which to me kind of almost looked involuntary. So I don't know, if that was just maybe he was hungry, maybe it was medication, maybe
Yeah.
there was something there. But I did notice his hand was trembling for a good minute or two.
I definitely didn't see that. I did see, and I did forget to speak on it, but when they first come into the courtroom, Baldwin had put a big pad of paper in front of him and
Yes.
give him a pen, and it was a blue pen, and I remember him looking at it. He's looking at it like, oh, a pen,
He
and
kept
then
holding it up.
yeah, yeah. And Baldwin wrote him a note on the top, and then he just started. Well, you and I talked about this. He wasn't writing; he was doodling, like
Yeah.
just doodling.
As was one of their interns.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
And that wasn't until the second day. But there was one of the defense interns was sitting next to me.
Yeah.
They
We both know.
they took one note that said Westfall, and
Yeah.
then the entire rest of the paper was doodle.
She had her head down. She had her head down, and she was like very stern and serious looking.
Her summer internship's almost over, so I wasn't gonna judge her.
Yeah.
But
That's funny.
now now my notes then goes kind of like right into into these exhibits that Baldwin very like, so I don't know if you have anything like before that that I've skipped over.
Just the fact that when the crime scene photos were held up at one point here with respect to Exhibit J, and Nick requested that they be sealed. Like I say, held up, but Baldwin had gone over and offered them to the state at the table, and the way the sun was coming in through the room or the light or whatever, it really showed that page. You could see through it, and a bunch of us noticed it, including the families.
Right.
And it was just like, oh, why are they doing that? But
And I don't think it was purposeful.
I don't think it was that wasn't purposeful, but it did, that part there wasn't, but it kind of went on from there, and it happened a lot.
The poster boards, I thought, to me, I mean, like, again, I understand, but
like,
one, they're big, they're clanky. You're really the only person you're showing it to is the judge, and you know what I mean. And he was trying to be very careful as far as like he would kind of like look through them and like kind of like hold it up and flip it back to the judge. But like when you're sitting in the audience, like I saw several of the poster boards, and so then it's not just like you're seeing a crime scene photo. You're seeing it in like 4 by, you're seeing it in like 2 by 4,
enlarged,
enlarged, and again, I get it's not intentional. I don't think that they at all would have done that on purpose. And it was then that to me actually was nothing compared to 2 days later when I think when one of the attorneys, I don't think realized that she was holding the blood pictures up at a 90-degree angle.
They were high.
I was staring directly at them behind her. But no, I didn't. I noticed that same thing that you did. That you were, and that was actually going to be my point about the unintentional ease of them accidentally showing crime scene photos to to people that
in the gallery.
And I will say also that I know that I do know that Libby and Abby's families were made aware before like at lunch that day, that after lunch that there would be crime scene photos used in court, and that every effort would be taken to make them kept so that they weren't shown to the public. so I think I was grateful that, that they were at least kind of kept in the up to date as far as
Yeah,
when to expect
definitely.
those types of things, because I don't know if anyone remembers Fig Solve's cousin's case. I know that was something that his family experienced with. They were told they would be informed when graphic
Right.
pictures like that would be shown, and
Yeah.
I think there was an oversight in it, and I don't think they
Mhm.
were notified, and
Yeah. I
you
remember him telling us that.
you
Yeah.
can't really take that back.
Yeah,
What
that's horrible.
happened to a family, and I know that's not something anyone ever forgets. So,
Yeah.
um, but again, I don't think it was intentional. I don't think Baldwin was trying to, flash pictures or anything. But it is kind of where we go into the whole side by side pics. And I don't want to go over them all and be repetitive with all of them, but
No.
I've
There.
got I've got Latrell as the one that was doing
Mhm.
the speaking for the prosecution at this point, and he asked to seal, and that's when Baldwin had no obligation or no objection. There was a pic of Libby's.
They were kind of tag teaming it. Latrell and Nick were
Yes.
both. Yeah, they went back and forth there a little bit.
Um,
I noted that Alan was chewing his fingernails at this point. I actually wrote that down when Baldwin was holding up, and they got into the side by side with the asterisks and Holder's hand drawn picture of an asterisk for his tattoo from April 2017.
right.
And yeah, I wrote down that Alan was chewing on his fingernails at that point.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sorry, I do have Nick requests under seal. Baldwin is cool with that. Um,
Yeah, because
and then,
Lutrell had asked if it was intended to be seen, and then it did skip over to Lutrell again. Like they went back and forth on that one, with
yeah.
this particular bit of information.
And then I have lots more of Brad Holder's Facebook page. I think some of this is bullshit.
Is that what you
um,
wrote?
yeah, yeah.
I've got a
And then I
funny
have,
side note from you, but
and then there
oh
was
wait.
another one that was Abby with the sticks on her in one side, the hand rune on the other side. Then there was one with Abby on the left side, and then a Brad Holder painting 1 year later
Mm,
on the right side. And then that is when Nick objected and said there was a lack of foundation for it, or Luttrell objected
yep.
to that picture because he said there was a lack of foundation.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's kind of where the testimony ended. But I was kind of surprised by that one because it was Holder had done a painting himself of Abby's body, and it was on the 1 year date of the anniversary of their murders to the day, and there was a tarot card as well.
Was that the Hanging Man?
Um, it could have been. I don't have the Hanging Man written there though.
Or the one where it's hanging upside down with the leg bent over? And
I'm not sure. I didn't write that down, Aspen. But the 1 year
either way,
painting was a bit, but and Baldwin stated he had asked Holder in the deposition, and he admits it's his drawing, page 19 to 21 of the Holder deposition.
which is weird. I mean, it is
Yeah,
it's weird.
it's a
It's
bit
weird
weird.
to paint
Yeah,
a picture of your son's
yeah,
friend that you barely knew
yeah.
on the year anniversary of her
But
passing,
yeah,
especially
people
when
do
we
weird
don't,
things.
especially when we've not seen that you're a budding artist in any other, you know,
Yeah.
we were all amazed at Brad Holder's watercolor work previously. Um,
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, it was a little odd. That was Exhibit L,
yes,
and that basically wrapped up their back and forth regarding that information.
and
And
that's
then
when we get to Purdy.
yeah, and he was a surprise
Well,
witness.
well, and actually, they called Kevin Murphy first. I don't know if you wrote this down, but they called Kevin Murphy first, but he was outside and they couldn't find him. But they had
Oh,
Roland Purdy ready, so they just switched their order and they had Purdy come in first,
hmm,
who for anyone that doesn't know, it was ISP officer. He was Detective ISP Roland Purdy.
Yeah, and he
What
worked
do you
on the
have?
case. He worked on the case between March 2017 and March 2018, specifically, and he testified a bunch about that Holder had been cleared,
Yes.
and he had looked at his Facebook with the understanding that he was cleared, and then um, he must have been shown a photo from Baldwin because he says, "I've never seen this before."
Is
And
that
Baldwin,
Exhibit J?
yeah, sorry.
That was Exhibit J. That was the left side was Libby's body. The right side was Sticks.
Hmm. I have it where he called it Exhibit L, but I thought it was supposed to be M because we already had Exhibit L. So there's a bit of confusion there on the exhibits.
Oh,
But
M was the mimic.
yeah, the
Okay.
mimic. And Purdy stated, "I have never seen this before." And
Yep.
Baldwin said, "The last depot in August." And then Purdy said, "I can't recall if you've shown me that." And then Baldwin got into Exhibit J and identifying, and then you get into the upside down hanging man picture. And he says, "You don't remember seeing that?" And Detective Purdy said that he did not.
Right. And then there was an objection that it was outside the scope of direct. And they asked for Purdy to be excused.
Mhm.
But then Purdy also, because when he was with ISP, he worked on the FBI's task force, and
Yeah.
as well as being a detective for the ISP.
Yeah. So he was sent to Delphi to assist, and he did interview Brad Holder at the Logansport Police Department, but he did not question him about the murders. He was actually called him in to question him about Odinism.
Right. Um,
He had been
and
told that Brad Holder would be a good source about Odinism.
correct. And then, do you mind if I um, because this was one of the this was probably the only time in the 3 days that I really kind of thought Baldwin was obnoxious, and it was when he was interviewing Purdy, who
Mhm.
was a very calm, like rational witness, and
Yeah.
and he was talking about interviewing Brad Holder in Logansport, but basically as a Odin expert, not as a suspect, and he saw no reason
Mhm.
to write a report or or take a video of the
Mhm.
or take a recording of the interview. And Baldwin said, with no question mark on the end, said, "You should
Mhm.
have written a report."
Yeah.
And then waited for like an answer, even though he said it as a very direct statement.
Mhm.
And then he doubled down and he said, um, he he then talked about, um, he said, "And you should have taken a recording." And again, did it as a statement with no question mark, but expected the witness to answer. Um,
Yeah, and Purdy did respond. He said, "Not necessarily.
right,
It was subject matter for the investigation. We were looking for information on Odinism."
right. And I believe one of the things he said, he said you should have recorded it. I have a note that I said I felt like he, was being very arrogant, and that's at that
Yeah.
point. He said you should have written a report. Um, Nothing. And that's when
This
they
was
went into Becky Patty being the first person that told them about Brad Holder and his Odinism connection.
mhm.
Also talked to someone, Tony ISP Beverly Shores, which is an indie officer in Odinist.
Yeah, okay, so this was in August of 2017.
Uh-huh.
And Purdy was asked, "Did you talk to Patrick Westfall?" He said, "No." "Did you talk to anybody else?" He said, "Yes. I talked to 3 Odinists that worked for the state: Tony Courtwood, who was an ISP officer; Beverly Shores, who was a police chief, and the third Indy officer I
Beverly
didn't
Shores is
get
a
his name."
place.
Sorry?
Beverly Shores is a town.
Oh, is that not the name of the police chief?
No, it's actually Beverly
Oh!
Shores. Beverly Shores is where Kevin Murphy. Kevin Murphy's an
Beverly
officer
Shores
in
is
Beverly
not
Shores.
the police chief. Okay. Oh, my Canadianism is showing. Yeah, my Canada is showing. That's what Ashley always says. Okay. Now, okay. Thank
But he
you.
did. He did
So I
acknowledge.
missed 2 of the names.
I only got one. But Purdy did say that even though Purdy does not recall Brad Holder talking about Patrick Westfall, but Purdy is familiar with Patrick Westfall, and as are most of the officers in that area. I mean, most of the Carroll County cops and the Delphi cops, they pretty much all have a Patrick Westfall story. Um, doesn't mean he had anything to do with killing those girls, but he was known to officers in the
Yeah.
area.
Well, he was the leader of the Odinists, and they'd been in the military together. And is this? I
He's
haven't got to the
older,
rest
yeah.
of my notes, but I know um, Messer, and Westfall, right? They had the photo.
Yes, Holder and Westfall met in the military. I think they did one or two tours together, and then Messer was an artillery guy in the military who I know knew Westfall. I don't know if he served with Holder as well, or if he knew him through um, Westfall. But those are the only 3 that actually had a personal connection. I mean,
Right.
Patrick Westfall has said he's never met Elvis Fields a day in his life. And I don't know if being Facebook friends with someone it means you know that you're blood brothers or what. But
Mm. Well, at this point, you had leaned over to me and you said, "Is Richard Allen on trial or Brad Holder's Facebook page?"
I
We were,
I'd heard Brad Holder's Facebook page 3 times more often than I'd heard the words Richard Allen that day.
yeah, yeah,
And I get it; they're trying to get a third party defense in, so I'm not criticizing them. They're doing
yeah,
what they're trying to do to get the some
yeah,
other guy did it defense to land.
yeah. That the bar's pretty high. None of this pertains to
Well, why did they set it so low?
crime. What's that?
I said, why did they set it so low with their
Oh,
with their delivery?
because they
Um,
didn't have anything. But Baldwin did ask, "Do you think he should not have been cleared?" And Purdy responded, "I trust their judgment,
trust their
and
judgment.
I trusted their judgment and would move on
Yep. And then we go into some pic of the Odin hanging tree of life. Um, I have a note here that at this point, RA is still touching his face, trembling a little bit, but he does seem engaged and interested. He turns around. He turned around and made eye contact with me,
Mm-hmm.
which is very unsettling. That was not the first time that day. Um, Exhibit P, Brad Holder Facebook page, was the stick F pick on left, and right was the tree of life. So those are somehow exculpatory pieces of evidence because they're
Mm-hmm.
pictures on a Facebook page.
So we had Exhibit N, which was the previously admitted transcript of Brad Holder interview, specifically page 88, and
Mm,
then the Odin hanging from the tree of life was Exhibit O, and then I got
okay.
into a couple of state exhibits 17 and 18.
Well, I mean, I've got Exhibit R here, which is the video of a pagan ritual with Patrick Westfall,
Yeah,
2016 dated,
yeah.
where I mean, I don't know if you're ready for this, but in this one, Patrick Westphal is touching. He's touching a tree. He's touching a tree.
Shocking, really. And
And then
wasn't
exhibit P, we have the Facebook page of Brad Holder saying, "Good friends help you move the bodies." Um, and at this point,
okay, wait,
Baldwin.
hold up. I have a note here. This one
Right.
was funny because I happened to turn around and I noticed that Frosty was sleeping.
Well, at this point, really quickly, let me say, at this point, Baldwin actually said Brad Holder is the murderer. That was the
Oh
first time he
shit.
came out in court and said Brad Holder is the murderer.
Oh wait, I missed that. Good job getting that one because I was too busy looking at Frosty sleeping. I totally missed that. Good job. I didn't know that. He flat out said it?
Yes, he said Baldwin, quote, called Brad Holder the murderer.
Jeez. Gosh. Okay. Well, there was judicial notice requested to be taken from Judge Gall. Frank's 1 to 4.
Do you know what judicial notice is?
Like, have a look at this extra, like star, like please look at it extra.
It's essentially to allow fact introduced in that's so well known that
Oh,
it's
okay, yeah,
that it's
yeah,
basically indisputable. So
right,
I'm
yeah.
so I'm not quite sure what about that they think warrants judicial notice, but they did.
Yeah.
So, and then are you gonna read one of my favorite lines from Goal that day?
I don't think I have it.
About the Franks.
No, I don't have it.
Baldwin then referenced the importance of the judicial notice for Franks 1 through 4, and Gull interrupted and said, "Well, Franks 1 and 2 have already been denied." Which, and now we know today,
Yeah,
so have Franks 3 and 4.
we've come full circle on those. Do you think there'll be a Frank's 5
Ugh.
with new information? Quote.
I mean, I think it's as likely as
We're
I think it's as likely as there'll be another Halloween movie.
We're getting a little bit biased here as we go on.
No, I'm really just playing it.
Yeah.
And I think he's doing their job here. I don't think it's a secret that I find it to be a stretch with some of the Odinism things, and sitting in a courtroom for 4 or 5 hours in that one afternoon, hearing about nothing but Brad Holder's Facebook page. I mean, I give it the level of seriousness that it deserves.
Yeah. Well, true enough.
In my
Yeah.
opinion, if you believe
Well,
that the Odinists are the guilty,
th- thankfully, we did receive some factual state exhibits showing where all these men were. How they weren't in Delphi that day, but we'll get to that in a little bit. After we cover Beverly Shores again, Kevin Murphy was called by Baldwin. Is that what you have? You sound.
Well, no, I still had on here. And the reason the Franks came up was Baldwin renewed the request for Gold to consider Franks 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, and 4. That's when Gold reminded him Franks 1 and 2 had already been denied.
Oh, very good. Okay.
And then I have a note in here that they when they did a lot of these side by sides, they did use the F tree picture that that a lot of us have seen. Which is funny because I didn't even know about the blood splatter expert that was going to testify 2 days later. But when I wrote this, I have a note that says, I find it very interesting the defense only uses the publicly released F tree picture when I think that's a very biased sample of a larger picture that we're only being shown something that is to serve a purpose. And we then 2 days later found out that's exactly the case.
Yeah.
That when you look at that tree, not zoomed in, that you get the actual picture of what it is, and it's not
Yeah.
like an isolated F on a tree.
Right.
Blood splatter all over that tree.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then I said this feels like cherry picking at its best.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're
And
right.
I'm sorry if that sounds subjective. I guess at that point in the afternoon I was feeling a little jaded by the I think really just by the fact that we were having to sit there like looking at or hearing about a Facebook page
Hmm.
being, the only thing that they were using
Yeah.
to tie this person to a crime.
It's crazy. It is crazy.
Who they then had to turn around and, when asked, is there any connection between this person and the murder, they said no.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah. A resounding no.
So,
Ugh.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead of you. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we got into Kevin Murphy, who was part of the little mini Rushville and Delphi little task force connection uh they
Oh,
had going on there.
no, he's from Buffalo Shores. Maybe Beverly Shores is a person. I'm sorry. So Buffalo Shores is where Kevin Murphy is
Oh,
an officer.
no, I wrote down Beverly Shores again.
Oh, you did.
So I obviously wasn't hearing that correctly.
Did you find it interesting when they were when Kevin Murphy first? Because Kevin Murphy was an interesting dude. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I could tell he's really going through it with all
Mhm.
of it. But
Yeah. Yeah.
they asked him his background, he mentioned that he was an officer, and then he mentioned that he had been a deputy in a courthouse. He mentioned a job or two that were not related to
Mhm.
security or law enforcement. And then they said, well, weren't you also retired ISP? And he was like, oh yeah, for 26 years.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
found I
As
found
an
it interesting
afterthought.
that he retired in 2004. He had no misconduct, no write ups, so he has a good record.
So he was
Um,
made aware of the two girls that had gone missing and offered assistance to the task force. That was
Day one,
February 13th. Yep, February 13th.
right? And that was the task force in Maryville or
That I'm not
Minnieville.
not sure on that.
He met at the command with Ligadon and Hammond.
Yeah. They grabbed the tips. He got the call on Sunday, February 19th, and then on the 21st he started on the Tuesday.
Right. And then he stopped working on Delphi on October 1st, 2019.
Right. He was assigned to the FBI task force. A lot of terrorism stuff, but otherwise he was working on Delphi.
Right. And, and the reason that, he's relevant to this part of the case is that, he's part of the trio
Yeah.
that, well,
I
in
was
his own words, when asked, if Brad Holder was a suspect in this crime, he responded that only in some circles.
Yeah.
And by that, he meant the circle he was in, which would include himself, Todd Click, and Ferenczi.
Mhm.
Um, he reported to Jay Harper out of Lafayette. You,
So Greg Ferenczi was
yeah,
doing the social media aspect work, trying to talk. They were making a lot of connections from Rushville to and Delphi. There was multiple people. We had 6 of them. Brad Holder, Patrick Westfall, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, Ned Snyder. Is that
Ned Smith.
Smith? Sorry, and Rob Abrams.
Yes, I believe so.
There was an undeniable link between the two communities with what those people were involved in, is what
Right.
Murphy testified.
Richard Allen at this point was staring at the ceiling, and he could not have looked more bored. Um,
Mhm.
but his attention kept kind of going back and forth between the ceiling and trying to focus.
Hmm.
Um, Sorry, that was a side note for
Yeah,
what was
that's
going on
good.
at that point.
That's a good side note. They got into the discussion about the field notes that
Right.
he hadn't seen in printed form. They were notebook only. Then he would put them into a Word doc on the ISP laptop. One and only, I have one and only time. That's
Wait,
the
is
only
one?
time, I guess. That's what I wrote down there. I'm not too certain on that. It was a bit, I got a bit lost about those notes that he was taking, but he had a process. He said that he would go to the home, interview the subjects, take DNA swabs, and he wouldn't
Never
even
sleep.
he would not leave the driveway before notating his tips or
Right.
leads.
He said he would never sleep until his work was done.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I also do have on here that that sorry that Murphy considered Brad Holder a suspect based on quote his overall knowledge and work.
Hmm.
And that's when the undeniable link between the Rushville and Odin guys came up. Baldwin shows him his Elvis Field notes. Murphy said Harper and Hammond uh, advised whom Murphy would conduct an interview with. He wouldn't sleep until his work was done. And on 2/18, Holman and Murphy interviewed Elvis Fields, and Harper was notified of that interview.
And they entered exhibit S, which was Elvis Fields denying consent to the DNA swab. That was February 2018. And then we get into the commotion in the hallway.
Oh yes, I'll let you tell that.
Oh,
At 2:39 p.m., Alan looked back at Kathy and Janice for one of the longest periods of time I saw him do it that day. Um, and and I took the expression on his face kind of as a scowl. Several other people that saw it took it as more of like something that probably was meaningful between them. So I'm not I don't know one way or another, but they definitely exchanged a prolonged glance towards each other at 2:39 that day.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, there was a deposition. I do not have a date for this. Do you? Where
Um,
Lieutenant Holman had been in a lengthy deposition. Um, there was a commotion in the hallway because Murphy stated
okay.
that he hadn't seen Holman in years, and Holman had a document, and he said, "What the fuck is this?" And Murphy said, "Jerry, I don't know." And then Murphy testified that it was field notes that he did for something that he did for Delphi.
It
And
was
then,
sorry.
Mhm.
It was 8/10/23.
Okay. Holman then asked, "How the fuck did they get them?" And Nick objected at this point, and he said, "We are here on a motion to dismiss. I've let the defense go very far afield here."
Right.
And then that's the end of my notes on that.
Well,
I mean,
he
it
said,
goes into the phone dump after that. So what did
that
you
was
have?
when they made the reference that oh, that's what happens when you get two football guys in the hall, like
Right, yeah.
which I thought was an interesting, it was almost like,
Analogy.
well, I mean, how could you help their two
Yeah.
grown men from having a huge blow up when they're football guys? Um, and the quote I have says, he says, "What the WTF is this?" And then how'd they get it? And he's referring to the Odin report. Um, Seemingly, that's when Nick objects about relevance. Baldwin says that he's proving evidence is being withheld and destroyed that was exculpatory. Nick again argues relevancy. Um, and then Nick goes into his cross and he made a statement that he said, you have not proven anything, Baldwin. Um,
So right before he
um,
gets into the cross, Baldwin Do you have in your notes about
I,
discussing the Holder phone dump? About if it's exculpatory, it's out, but if it's potentially useful, and he did say this several times, Baldwin did, about being, if it's potentially useful, then he still has to prove the intentionality. And Baldwin stated, I don't expect Holman to get on the stand, so I'm left only with circumstantial evidence to try to
well,
prove his point here.
yes, but right before that, I will say Gull did interject, and Gull said,
Yeah,
"Is this going to get tied up soon?" And Baldwin said, "I'm done." And Gull said, "That wasn't my question." Um, that's when Nick got up to cross, and basically started out by saying, "There's no Delphi connection." That he didn't know or see. Oh, because Kevin Murphy, who's based his knowledge on the guilt of Brad Holder on his work, had not seen his Facebook page
right,
or didn't know how to look for it.
right.
Did,
And in
did, did I
fact,
did I miss did I misquote that?
no, he did. He said, I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. He did say that. I wrote it down when he was asked about Brad Holder's Facebook.
Oh,
And
thank
Nick said,
God!
Did you? Yeah, Nick
Thank
said,
God,
Did
Brad
you
Rosie does.
ever? Nick said, Did you ever personally interview Brad Holder? And Murphy said, No.
Right, but he's sure that he did it based on there's an undeniable
Well,
link.
hang on now. Murphy testified that he could not place Brad Holder or Elvis Fields in Delphi at the time of the murders.
Right. So
And Nick asked, There's no evidence of murders on Brad Holder's phone. And Murphy said, I'm not sure.
yeah, and and this is I will say this was a point that I felt like there was a wasted opportunity not taken because what I wanted to hear at this point was
Yeah.
if I'm Kevin Murphy or I'm Todd Click and I'm and I and I genuinely believe that that I was on to something and that I was
Hmm.
ignored or and that
Hmm.
and that they've got the wrong guy and that the person I think is guilty is actually guilty. And then the prosecutor stands up and within 3 questions destroys my entire credibility and evidence.
Yeah.
I would then, as Brad or Andy, was hoping so badly that one of them would stand up in their
Hmm.
cross and say, "Do you feel like you can't make that connection because Unified Command did not give you the tools to
Right.
make the connections or investigate it to the full extent that they should have?" I feel like that was a missed opportunity by the defense
Hmm.
because
Right.
they really just let Murphy just hang out to dry with no credibility after that, and I think that would have redeemed him and um, brought him back to a place where you know, people would have sympathized and been like, you know what, he might have found a connection. But he was shut off from the higher ups.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think he was shut off from the higher ups. I mean, eventually, when they were exhausted, everything. I mean, you
But that's
know,
why. But that's why if I'm the defense attorney, I would have said, do you feel
tried
like
to spin it.
do you feel
Yeah.
like you didn't make the connection because you weren't given the tools to do so or the support.
I think he would have answered honestly, and it wouldn't have been the answer that the defense was looking for.
Well, if you look at the timeline of that as well, though, because the dates on a lot of those things, um, I mean, they were very busy going down the Keegan Klein route. That's when they did the
Mhm.
raid on Keegan Klein's house. Then right after that, on March 6th, they did the first raid on Ron Logan's house. So I mean, you see where like the
Mhm.
main consensus was at the time for the
Yeah,
investigation.
sure.
So I can easily see where these guys kind of were just discounted,
Yeah.
um, and it might be because they easily were they had alibis, but um But no, I just thought that was a missed opportunity. And if I was Andy or Brad, I think I would have grabbed onto that opportunity rather than let my witness hang out there by them all on their own.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very
Um,
good point. So there was judicial notice taken again. It was a request. Sorry, it was a request for Judge Gall to take judicial notice by Andrew Baldwin for the June 20th, 2023 report regarding the transportation of Robert Bastian, and also for the May 31st order 2024 denying disqualification.
right. And that was after Murphy was dismissed, by the way.
Yeah.
2:45, Murphy was dismissed.
We heard from him again.
Yes. Yeah, because it was the second time where he got
emotional.
very emotional.
So, yep. And then we got into Lieutenant Holman that Nick called when Gall asked if the state had any evidence to present, which, thank God, we got to some evidence,
Right.
Thankful for that.
Um,
Did you have anything else?
no, I'm just looking here because I've got is it lieutenant or sergeant now? It's lieutenant, right?
It's Lieutenant, yeah.
Lieutenant, yeah, because he started out as a first sergeant Lafayette Post. Holman says he did no extraction of Brad Holder's phone. I have Libby's phone data and video on bridge. Holman testifies the murders took place between 2:30 and 3:30 at the crime scene on Ron Logan's property. The video on Libby's phone at 2:17, which he misspoke in court. Clearly, he meant 2:13.
I wondered that.
And I actually have somewhere in my notes they actually reference the exact time down to the
Yeah, but I did wonder if the 2:17 was when he told them to go down the hill. But I left that in my little short that I did because I wrote down 2:17.
Well,
so I wondered.
I know you're on the metric system, but I don't think any math system works where I don't think you can get from 13 to 17 in 43 seconds.
Oh, I know. I thought about that after too. I thought about that today, actually. But I knew that I heard 2:17.
Yeah, no, he said
I
2:17.
left it, and I do try to. Yeah, I mean, of course, I put a video out on it, so I'll have to edit that actually because that's wrong. But I wrote down, I knew what I heard, so I thought, well, must be something more I missed.
Holman also was a few minutes, like when they first called Holman, we had to wait for him for a few minutes. Just a minute or two, but
I don't think it was this time though.
It was just a minute or two. He was out in the hall somewhere, but all three times he testified, they had to kind of go find him.
Yeah.
But Holman also after he said the 2:17 thing, he said Richard Allen told the girls to go down the hill. So I mean, he at that point outright
named him,
said that he was BG and that was Richard Allen.
Yeah. Just before we get into the alibi and all the information for Holder, I just wanted to point out a couple things that I had written down.
Please.
That Luttrell had said that there was an aerial investigative command which included Peru and Lafayette posts, and that the Lafayette post oversees all criminal investigations for ISP, which I don't think we've ever actually, been told that. And then with respect to Purdy, and Luttrell asked Holman if he had any information or knowledge on the recordings that Purdy had done may have done in summer of 2017. And Holman stated that no, he was in training for the FBI at the National Academy in Quantico, Virginia.
He was on vacation and then he went to Quantico.
Okay, and then he didn't get back until January of 2018.
Yes.
So he had no knowledge of that stuff.
And I do have one note really quickly back when Murphy was on the stand. the direct line of questioning with that I thought was the most damning with him. Nick said, "You ever talk to Brad Holder or look at his social media post? No. Can you place Elvis Fields or Brad Holder at the scene of the crime or in Delphi at the time of the murder? No. Have you seen anything that would have to do with this crime with his interviews? No." So like those three questions, is when I was like, like nothing else he testified to mattered, because he just said,
Right.
I see no connection to him being guilty.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to get back to Holman, I I'm trying to say, so who did interview him in Logansport?
Sorry?
Oh no, I
Purdy
was trying to
interviewed.
think. Because when Holman said Luttrell asked about the phone extractions or exam of Holder's phone, Holman said no, and then he was asked, "What about the interview in Logansport?" And Holman said, "No, I was on vacation in Quantico." And then he went into the video. The murders took place on 213, between 2:30 and 3:30 on Ron Logan's property.
Yeah.
That's when Rich Jones lived down the hill.
So Luttrell said, "Where did Brad Holder say he was that afternoon of February 13th, 2017? And Holman said he was at the Liberty landfill in Buffalo, Indiana, which is approximately 30 to 35-minute drive.
Right.
Holder said that he went to the workout facility in Logansport after work."
Anytime.
Yeah. And
Anytime Fitness.
mhm. And then State Exhibit 4 was entered, and it was an email regarding the check-in for the work records for Brad Holder at Liberty Landfill.
Yes, his time card.
Yep, and that included, so there were two things included: the documents from Liberty Landfill, the workout at Anytime Fitness, and then the key fob system, which showed Brad Holder's hours on
Workout.
February
That's
work
the gym.
hours at Liberty Landfill.
The key fob was the gym. They had his time cards for work, but the key fob report was from the gym. 100%.
That's specified. Was it?
Yeah, no. Liberty
Shit.
Landfill emailed their time cards. The gym
Oh.
then provided the fob records.
Oh shit. Okay. Huh. I wasn't specific enough on that then.
Right.
So
Because
those are
you
time
have the
cards.
times, the 4:55, 12:12, the time stamp. Yeah.
So they did interview and did a deposition with the woman who testified about his alibi. I have her name later on. It's Susan something, I think it was. Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that, because I wasn't specific enough. So the key fob only showed Holder clocking in at 4:08 p.m. It didn't show him clocking out then on the
No,
on
because
the fob system.
when you use the key fob, you don't have to swipe out usually. Like, I don't know if you have,
Hmm.
like when I when I go in my building and everything, I have to swipe to go in, but of course to like walk out, you don't. And so I'm sure if I like needed like to know when I've gone in and out of my condo building or in and out of the elevators, I could probably get a time-stamped record of that. And that sounds like what the gym provided to them. Like I said, Liberty Landfill was in Buffalo, right?
Hmm.
The gym was in Logansport,
Hmm.
so there's a 30-minute drive there. And I know from his time card, we have him clocked in at work at 4:55 a.m. Clocked out for lunch at 12:12 p.m. He clocked back into work at 12:42 p.m. He then clocked out of work at 2:45 p.m. And that he swiped his key fob at the gym at 4:08. So technically, I mean, if you really want a tight timeline, you could have him to make that 30-minute drive to Delphi, get to the crime scene at 3:15, do whatever, and then drive another 30 minutes to 28 minutes to Logansport to get to the gym by 4:08.
Yeah.
you know, but I mean, if you thought Richard Allen's timeline was tight, Brad Holder just made it an Olympic sport.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Um, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say that Holder stated that his and Logan's phone were collected at the same time on
Right.
Friday, February 17th, 2017. However,
Yeah.
State Exhibit 6 was entered for February 14th, 2017 at noon at Logan Holder's High School. There was a consent search form signed
Yes.
by Logan's mother, and ISP Bunner conducted the search and looked at Holder's phone.
Right. And
The girls had not been officially found yet.
they were found. I think they were found actually while Bummer was at the school.
Right.
Um, and Logan actually, and Logan, I mean, he was a minor, but but I do have Exhibit 6 as Logan's consent to the
Mhm.
search
Mhm.
of his phone. It was not Delphi PD either. That Brad Holder had said. Um,
Yeah, the purpose of Sergeant Bunner going to the high school was because they were searching for the girls. So that was the purpose of obtaining the phone.
yeah,
Wasn't because he was a suspect.
yes.
They were just trying to locate them. And Baldwin come in on a cross exam at that point, unless you have anything else.
The next thing I have is Holman saying Richard Allen did not come back to the crime scene. So I'm
Mhm.
assuming that was on the cross, right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Baldwin stated that law enforcement believes that Richard Allen left and never returned. Is that correct? To which Holman responded, yes.
Right. To which Baldwin then said 4:33 a.m. ping,
Yeah, who turned on
and
the phone?
Holman said new technology.
Hmm. Yeah. And Baldwin said, so you did not know about the 4:33 a.m. phone pings last fall.
Oh, I
Is
found that
that
was interesting.
correct? And Holman said yes.
Yeah, I found that interesting
Hmm.
because then what did Baldwin say?
Well, he got into the phone extractions, but the point is that 4:33 a.m. information is new with the software update from Celebrate, and that was only just determined in May of this year.
No, no, no. The update is going to. I My understanding is that the update is going to clear up the misconception of what happened with that. Because remember the cell that report was done by AT&T back in 2019, where they got the 433 ping. Because remember it was pinging every 15 minutes.
Well, I don't know. We heard testimony about the 14 to 15 SMS messages that came in at 4:33, and that was new information presented by OJ later on, and
That
I thought
was
that come from the Celebrate extraction
But
myself.
it did, but we heard about the pings that were being done. Um, there was a defense filing back in March or April. I can't remember which one it was, but that's where they talked about the fact that that's where they used the terminology that the phone was under in a shoe or under a shoe under Abby's leg, and that it didn't ping, but then all of a sudden at 4:33
Hmm.
it not only pinged, but um it was accessed, um meaning that they were saying someone literally clicked the phone on, and that was in a court document before May.
It was?
Yes.
4:33 a.m. was in a court document
you,
before May?
you remember what I'm talking about, where they said it was that the phone pinged and like there was no pings in between, and then there was a ping and the phone was
Yes.
accessed. Yeah, that's That was before May that we got that information. If I'm wrong, everyone in the chat will correct me. You know, and I'm not
Oh
saying that was
no, I'm
started
sure
right,
I'm wrong. I'm sure I do
but
not remember that, and I tied that information, I guess, in my
but
head to the Celebrate dump, the new one this year, and also the
no,
it was
we've not seen the
15.
results on that yet.
Yeah, it was 15 SMS
'Cause
messages that came in. Like I thought this 4:33 a.m. was solely because of the Celebrate.
no,
Okay.
'cause if you think
All
about it,
right.
the defense hasn't seen that yet. Like the defense doesn't have
Yeah,
the
they
report
do.
yet.
They do have a report. They have
They,
a precursory report.
right, but they don't have the full report, so they can't have their experts can't go over it yet and re-depo.
No, but they
So
found out about the 4:33. My understand the way I took it was this is the information that they needed because this was why it was critical for them to have this for the third party defense.
no, we didn't.
Because
You know, like I did. We did not know about the SMS messages that were coming in. You
no,
know, but as far as the phone pings, we knew about the phone ping and
yeah,
that it being accessed, um,
yeah,
because people were talking about how that meant it had to have been turned on. Like there were people out there saying there's
hmm
no other way you can get around it than
right.
saying someone picked up that phone and turned it on. Where
Okay,
they
well,
testified, later Cecil testified that later in the hearings that that phone did not die until after 4:30 a.m. Um, and that the new technology or the new update would help clear up some of the stuff that I think there's confusion in how they interpret these
okay.
reports.
So we knew about 4:33 a.m. prior to May. That's not new then. Okay,
To me, the thing that was new was the iMessages or the SMS messages, which they
okay.
go into it. But
Okay, I must have missed it then because I had that tied right in my head. I had it tied in to the new Celebrate
well,
extraction. So that's
if
fine. I'll look it up.
when we're live, like everyone like tells me I'm the dumbest person alive and I'm an idiot, then we will, and
No, you're when are
I
you
will grovel.
wrong? Come
But
on.
but
You're
I'm
never
not,
wrong.
but I'm pretty sure that that information has been out there since before May. But again, I get confused by the Google this
Oh
or the
yes.
geofencing
Oh,
or
for sure.
so
Hmm.
and like I said, and those and some of those the pings were from AT&T,
Yeah.
but then there were cell tower ones, so I'm like,
Oh, well, that all gets kind of crazy, but
right.
yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, that's just, ugh. Um,
Andy Baldwin said, okay, so your phone's still
yep.
on. So hold it. So he said, Andy did cross, and then Holman's phone's still on at 4:33. Just learned it recently. Andrew Baldwin said, we heard about it last fall.
Pardon me. Wait, Andrew Baldwin said that?
Yes. So when Holman said, just learned about it recently, Andrew Baldwin responded, we heard about it last fall. That's apparently the one thing the defense,
Hmm.
apparently had access to. But that's when Baldwin, I thought, brought up a very interesting thing that made me scratch my head for a minute, because for anyone that's covered this case for as long as we have and has looked into as many things about this case, all of a sudden, Andrew Baldwin said a name I'd never heard before. And I'm just going to say his initials because, well, I mean, he's probably an adult now, but at the time, this
Hmm.
was a minor.
Yeah.
But Baldwin just randomly says Indy. Um, and he said his phone was extracted. And then he said, did he date Abby? Did he have a rune on his hand? Um, Making all of these comparisons and alluding to, of course, that they never did a phone extraction of Brad Holder's phone, who had a much closer connection to the victim,
Right.
but yet
Hmm.
they did an extraction of this Indy, who was a minor
Hmm.
um, at the time. And my immediate thought was, well, you just said you had 101 people's phone extraction information.
Hmm.
And I'm like, could you not have picked an adult to
Right.
dox?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, did you have to pick one of the, one of the only, minor teenagers that his name was not publicly known in this case?
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
and so he said 101 people phone extractors, but Brad Holder didn't seem to make that cut. And then Holman said the FBI took the phones and did that, not us. Plus, we had no reason to take Brad Holder's phone because at that time the girls were missing. He was the father of a friend or whatever. He's like, we didn't have a reason to need to take his phone on the 13th.
So I have in my notes that we got back to February 17th, 2017 email between Abbott and Carter.
Mm-hmm.
And suspect number 6 was brought up again. And he's a Vinlander.
Yes.
And there was reference made to the Joint Task Force collecting any intelligence that may exist.
Yes.
And Holder stated that some people considered Brad Holder a suspect. Some people did not, like Murphy had testified. And I have, who is suspect number 6?
Wasn't it Messer?
I have no idea.
Because isn't he the one that they were trying to say, like that he thought his phone might have pinged in the cemetery?
Yes, yeah,
There's nothing to prove it. Like
right.
they literally have to be like, yeah, no, there's no evidence of that.
hmm And Baldwin said, "Are you suggesting Logan Holder is suspect number 6?" And Holman said, "No."
Right. I did also like when Holman turned around and used Purdy's own words
Yeah.
when he was asked, because he said there was the lack of reasoning. Holman used Purdy's words and said he was he was asked about would most investigators do what you did or do something differently, and he said no, most ISP officers would have taken a report, would not have taken a report or taken Brad Holder's phone. Baldwin then kind of went back onto the Brad Holder mimic Facebook pick rant and said that he believes it's exculpatory and that the Georgia thing is warranted and exculpatory. Baldwin then made the comment, "This is what we're up against. In order for us to prevail." And then he said, "I'm gonna stop beating a dead horse."
You skipped ahead.
What?
Sorry, I remember that quote. You skipped ahead.
Oh, did I?
No, well, just from my notes, what I took. No, sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
No. He said, he's like, "I'll stop beating a dead horse." But then he didn't stop talking about this.
Yeah. Well, I think he said, "I'm beating a dead horse here a little bit."
Yeah, and then he
When he continued
sarcastically
on.
said, "Oh wait, this isn't part of the evidence, so I can't get into that." And like rolled his eyes and said that like sarcastically, which again, like I didn't take it as him being like a douche or mean. Like I actually kind of found his sarcasm charming.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that one went right
at least
over my
that
head
day.
because I didn't even write it down. But you're off a little bit further. But I just wanted to go back because this was one of my favorite interactions.
Okay.
I thought Baldwin did this particular part of the cross exam with Holman. I thought he did this really. He really made a point because it made me pause when he did it. It was very effective, I thought. So it's just a brief interaction, and you touched on some of it already, but I'm just going to read what I have here because it just flows. So Baldwin stated, "So there's no documentation or any evidence that Brad Holder's phone was taken by the FBI or anyone else." Nick objects. Question that calls for speculation. Baldwin, I'll withdraw. Baldwin, should there have been a report? Holman, most detectives would not have documented. They should have taken Brad Holder's phone. Holman says, no, I don't agree. You would have taken his phone. And then Holman says, no, he was Logan's father. We were gathering subject info. But when Baldwin turned, he wasn't getting the answers he wanted from Holman. And he said, like, you would have, because you're like upper echelon, police officer,
Right.
and you would have taken his. It was very effective when he
Right.
presented that. I don't know if you remember it, but I just had to go through that because I will give him credit for that, because that was good lawyering to me when he did that. I mean, he didn't break through with that, with Holman, but it did get your attention. Got my attention anyway. That's it. Sorry. I bumped you off your dead horse. You're beating of
No,
your
no.
dead horse.
You're fine. I'm actually gonna let you talk for 1 minute because I have to use the restroom really
Yep.
quickly. I'll be right
Okay.
back.
Oh no, not by myself.
Just continue on with
uh,
your notes. I'm listening.
well, Baldwin got into the exculpatory or potentially useful argument again. And he got into what was this regarding? Because we skipped over. This was regarding the mimic picture. Gosh, we were back into that. This was after the 15-minute break, around 3:30, and yeah, he's arguing again about taking Holder's phone, and that he believes it's exculpatory and at minimum it's possibly useful. But he said, Baldwin states, nobody else has pictures mimicking the crime scene. Nobody else has a son dating Abby. The FBI Special Agent Massa is saying he could be involved or in play on February 17th, 2017. Brad Holder said that he gave his phone over to Holman, and they said that they didn't need to take his phone. And here's what we don't have, Baldwin says. Number one, the video of Logan Holder being interviewed on February 14, 2017 at the high school. Number two, the video of Brad Holder during his first interview, February 17, 2017, Delphi Police Station. So he says, I guess. Number three, the data from Brad Holder's extraction of his phone, if
Right.
it happened.
Right. And can I mean, Logan was 16, right? I
Something
mean,
like that.
are they videotaping interviews with kids at high schools when they're
No.
16? When their girlfriend's missing, or that they've met once or twice.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I mean, Baldwin continues on with his arguments, stating that Purdy testified that he was only going to interview Brad Holder about Odinism. And then in August of
Right.
2018 is when Purdy claims there's only Odinism, and Brad Holder says it was about Patrick Westfall. Holman says it's not necessary to take notes. Murphy said it's not necessary to take notes.
Right.
Common sense and logic, with 6 cell phone extraction stacks, emails with Carter. We have to prove that there's intentionality there.
You took good notes there.
Another reason we should believe that it could be potentially useful. And this is the key point. He said, we win these cases based on little nuances.
Yeah.
And what evidence is there of intentionality? Now, that was a key point because, and that gets to the crux of the matter for me, regardless of whether we're talking about third party defense, or not, but reasonable doubt.
Right. That's when
To me.
you said intentionality, right?
Hmm.
Do
Hmm.
you have what he said right after that?
I have that Amber Holder, that they split up and they were friendly.
It says
Something happened
intentionality.
near a river.
He said, and then Andrew Baldwin said, law enforcement can lie. Brad Holder is a murderer, and Richard Allen's 16th Amendment rights have been violated, and he'll never get a fair trial. That was Baldwin's summary.
Oh, wow. Okay. Jeez, I missed all that.
Mm-hmm.
Surely to God I have that later. Oh, I do have that later. I didn't
Okay,
write it down exactly the way you had it there. That's when he said they blamed you, Judge Gall,
yeah,
when they lied about it. That was intentionality. The motion to dismiss is a remedy with respect to the 14th and the 6th Amendment. He's
yeah,
never going to get a fair trial.
right.
Yep. Then Luttrell come back with a nice 3 things. He
At
says,
3:54 p.m. Yeah, he gave the state's dismissal rebuttal.
mm-hmm. Luttrell says the defense alleges 3 things. Number 1, Brad Holder's phone extraction. There's no evidence they possessed it, no evidence there was extraction. Brad Holder is the only source of this info from the deposition, and I quote, I believe they took my phone. He said, I'm pretty sure 3 times. He said, I'm not going to say positively. He
Don't
said,
quote me.
I'm pretty sure they took both of our phones in Delphi in the police department lobby. Number 2, evidence of the second interview with Detective Purdy. Doesn't have any reason to believe there ever was a recording. And number 3, with the mimic photo, Purdy, quote, believes he saw it on Brad Holder's Facebook from 2012. The defense has that photo. And then Luttrell references Chisel versus State here. And he says, and I wrote down, it must be of such a nature that you're unable to obtain it reasonably. And Luttrell says they have it about the mimic photo. They
Right,
have it, and yet they ask you to dismiss the charges.
right.
And then he quoted Blanchard versus State
Yes,
regarding the exculpatory versus potentially useful.
right. He
Sorry, I
said
just
something
kind of
about
ran
the
through that.
he said something about X. I can't read my own writing here. X. Something from the second statement to Purdy. No reason was felt to record the interview. So this was Luttrell kind of giving just a summary of the
Yeah,
things.
that was point number 2. Yep.
Yeah, and then he said Brad Holder has an alibi and no connection to the crime. Baldwin then said, Judge, we want written reasoning and evidence of a Brad Holder phone dump. Which, again, they didn't take Brad Holder's phone, but yet the defense is requesting um, written reasoning and evidence of a
Yeah.
phone dump that the prosecution is saying we don't have and didn't do.
Yeah.
So this is the second time in a short day of hearings that the defense is making points to ask for things that the prosecution says they don't have. And not only that, they've also gone as far to say the defense has all of the discovery other than the calls and statements that are being made in real time that we now are seeing
Yeah.
being continually being handed over as new discovery. So if you're to believe the state, anytime there's a new discovery dump being given to the defense, it is essentially the phone calls and the statements that he's making on the phone, which we then later in the week find out total like 750 calls, like 250 hours worth of phone calls that they have on record, that they have on recording.
It was a lot.
Right. And then
I
we're
think it
almost
was
done with it.
150, I think, but That seems like
it was
seems
150 to 250.
yeah, I was like, it seems like a year ago now. There's
Right.
all these different facts, but yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. We get into all
It
kinds of
was
details
way
about
more phone
that.
calls than I've made in the last week.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, he could do it at all time of the day and night on his tablet,
right. So I mean,
as long as it's charged.
we once again though have yet another person testifying unequivocally that one of these Odinist or Rushville guys, there's no evidence tying them to Delphi or to the crime scene or to the crime itself.
Mhm.
Like there's just no there. And the defense didn't press it. They didn't,
Mhm.
they they
Yeah,
they
there was
didn't
just
they didn't even give
nothing.
they didn't even give a counter,
There was
reasoning or
nothing.
argument to that.
There was I know, it was the lack of
They
new
just let it go.
information and arguments to try
Right.
to
They
yeah,
fought so hard to get these guys this third party in, and then
yeah.
when it came to literally, you know, because that's what the last thing you remember is the fact that like you heard for an hour and a half them try to convince us Brad Holder has something to do with this, and then in one question they're like, nope, there's no evidence to it,
Mhm.
nope, there's no tie to it. I'm like, wouldn't you push, or at least try to place doubt in that narrative? But no, they just let it go, and they did the same thing other times throughout the week. But
Mhm.
I thought that was odd that they chose to remain like kind of passive when it came to
Alibis?
right, and just to let the state have the last word on
Strange.
the guys they're trying to get in as the third party suspects.
I mean, the burden is high. And what is it, 401 and 403? It's probably too late and I'm too tired to remember. I know the burden for the 401 is, or do you know what I'm speaking of?
Right. Yes.
The 401 isn't that high, but the 403 isn't it? I mean, here we are. We're back to the nexus, right? I mean, there really wasn't anything, was there? Was there anything?
Um. No, I mean, I think when we get into the motion and lemonade, I mean, I think that's when you could probably try to find some pieces, um, with things that make more sense
Yeah,
to get admitted. But I mean, like I said, and this was the motion to dismiss. So I mean, the evidence we're talking about right now is basically
true.
them just
Yeah.
trying to dismiss the whole case. When we get into you know, the real Elvis Fields of it all, and
Yeah.
and
Oh.
the Ron Logan and Keegan Klan of it all, you know, that's I think a better time to really say, was the next
Mhm.
met with any of it.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think any nexus was met as far as warranting this case to be dismissed by anything I heard in that hearing. And not because the defense did a bad job, just because I mean I don't
Well,
like
I think they did.
what piece of information would cause a dismissal in the
I'm
case.
gonna say they did a bad job. I mean,
Um,
I mean, I'm just gonna say it. Like, they had a bad week.
I mean, well, I mean, I mean, not entirely. They
Well,
they
okay,
don't
they
have
got
to drive 200 miles to see Richard Allen.
yeah, and that's a huge win, and I get it. But like, I'm talking all these motions that they put
Right.
forth, and they're just getting hammered. And I mean,
Right.
they're gonna get hammered, and we know they're gonna get hammered almost as soon as they're filed.
And both
But you
sides will.
you expect them to pull out something to present, like,
And both sides will. I mean, there'll be days that I mean, with every court case, there's going to be days when
mm,
you're going to watch things and be like, oh,
yeah,
boy, the state really fell flat with that one, or like in a perimeter situation where you're like, oh my goodness, that's the expert they got.
yeah.
Um, I mean,
I mean,
I think that if I think they were doing
they did their job,
I think they were
I
doing the
guess.
best job they could.
They had to work with.
I just really think they chose a bad defense.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they're gonna have to choose another one, aren't they? That's my opinion.
So what do you think? So what is your? So what, like, well, I guess we'll talk about that when we do the lemonade. But I mean, did you don't think you didn't see anything that would warrant a case dismissal by this motion, right?
No.
Okay. Not
Did
even
you?
like no, not at all, nothing. Like I actually wasn't quite even sure, like
Yeah.
like like was the strongest point they made that they didn't take Brad Holder's phone,
I think so.
and therefore the whole case should be dismissed?
I do believe. Yeah.
Or is it that because they they had investigators that investigated this Odinism lead, and it led to nowhere,
Mm,
and they didn't keep following it?
yeah.
So is that reason that we should dismiss it? Or I don't know. I was
Like I
confused by
said,
that.
they had a bad week. Okay,
You
they
know,
had a bad day one.
I thought that Baldwin. I said I think that Baldwin. I think that Baldwin is. I think he's. I think he came across charming. And one thing I definitely noticed is that when he was sitting in the he was sitting on the, so it was like Brad Rosie was in the first chair, and then we had OJ, and then Richard Allen, and then around on the side of the table was Andrew Baldwin, which, by the way, I will say, out of the 4 chairs at the defense table, three three of them did not match, and it really bothered me all week because it was triggering an OCD in me that.
Aspen, I know.
I mean,
No, you're
you
telling
know how
the
badly I
audience.
wanted to like wait till everyone left the courtroom and like go switch them all out.
I know your
Well, no one
OCD
was
was
looking,
showing.
but but no, I I do think that every attorney had strong moments.
Oh, you're so
I
kind.
I just think the first day, I honestly, I it was the most lackluster of the 3 days.
Oh, it definitely
Um,
was.
there were the least amount of fireworks, and none of the attorneys, I think, gave their strongest performance on the first day. So I'll
Okay,
get
that's
more into
probably
my
fair.
opinion.
That's fair because it
I'll
was
get
a lot of.
I'll get more into my opinion on the attorneys, on the second and third day.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I agree with that.
If anyone watches this, and and everyone,
Yeah.
if anyone actually even wants us to do a day 2 and day 3,
Well,
um,
it wasn't our fault the way this all rolled out.
now I'm trying to see, because that was pretty much the end of
Well,
Baldwin.
there's other people out there that like every little minute detail like us, right?
I mean,
They're the ones
I hope
still
that we've
watching.
given. I've not watched any of the coverage
I
by
haven't either.
anyone, so I'm not quite sure what people have talked
Well,
about
I
and what
shouldn't
people
say that.
haven't. So
Kevin and Tanya, I have listened to.
I hope that we are providing like a comprehensive, informative look at what we observed.
Yeah.
I liked the idea of doing it with you, so that we could kind of see what we both picked up on, what one of us might have
Yeah.
missed, or what we might have taken differently
Mhm.
from. So we all know 2 people can hear the same thing and
Mhm.
hear 2 different things. Um, I don't
Absolutely.
see anything else left from here as far as the
No.
Baldwin judge. Yeah, we went the reason. Yep. Judge Golden pretty much said court will start at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, and it will start with the testimony of Dr. Monica Walla. On
That didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. In the morning, issues are mixed a bit. So
Mhm.
some of the subpoenas are for Thursday in the motion of limine.
I wrote down mushed together. The
Right,
issues are
because
all kind of mushed together.
well, they mentioned that some of the he mentioned that some of the suppression stuff would be mentioned in the limine, or was it that some of the limine would be mentioned in the suppression hearing?
Mm.
This was Nick I'm talking about, but
Yeah, I mean, there was overlap for sure.
right. And then there
Did
was
you have
subpoenas for Thursday emotional. Diener then asked Walla to be released. Why do I have that on the first day?
Yep, that's what happened.
Okay.
When we left day 1, the plan was, 'cause remember OJ had testified she wasn't gonna need a full half a
Oh,
day.
that's right. Remember, because Wednesday was supposed to be a half a day. That's right.
Mhm. And we thought we were getting out early. Remember?
Yeah.
Vaguely, remember
Yeah.
that?
And
Well,
then we started at 9 a.m. and left at 7:30 or 8.
yeah, and Dr. Walla, yeah, Diener asked for Walla to be excused in the morning.
That's right.
And so we really did figure we were in for a short day on day 2, and what happens?
Well, of course,
Walked in and
the same thing that I said would happen. When I said, this means tomorrow will probably be the longest day.
it wasn't, but don't forget, on day 2, we started off at 9:03 with Rosie withdrawing the motion to suppress the second interview with Holman.
Right. With no explanation.
So we well, that's coming back. I'm
Oh,
calling
of
that
course.
coming back
I mean,
because
we'll get into that. We'll get into that when we
Mhm.
do the day 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, my take on that was that by the end of the first day, which I'll say, court ended the first day at 4:04 p.m. So I mean,
Mhm.
all of that, we really were only in court. I mean, if you take away the hour
4
lunch,
hours.
we were really only in there for 4 hours.
I know.
Um,
I think our us going back and forth on it has been almost that.
yeah, no, probably, definitely. Um,
We
but
have our colorful flavor added in.
I believe that when I think that the attorneys went home that night, and I think that they looked at what they had left
Mhm.
to present.
Yeah.
I think everyone was under the understanding this was not going to go into Friday. One, Gull has a court in Fort Wayne, and two, it was my understanding that that a portion of the family members of the victims had
Mhm.
a funeral to go to on Friday,
Yeah.
and of course the court would want to accommodate them being able to go to that. So I knew that they were not going to let this go into Friday. And I think that when the attorneys realized how much they had left to get through, they realized something had to give. And let's just say I would not be surprised to see the suppression motion for the second statement to be refiled,
Yeah.
especially if the defense doesn't get positive news when it comes to some of these rulings.
Yeah,
Because
I just flat out say it's going to be refiled, and that
I
was just
agree.
purely a time constraint thing
I
because
agree.
there's no way, like, they're gonna my opinion is, their defense.
We were in court till 9 p.m. After 9 p.m. on Thursday night. There's no way they could have fit another hearing in that. If you
Mm-mm.
and one as important as the
Yeah.
suppression hearing to suppress the second statement, because that was a police interview. It would have opened the door for
Mhm.
mention of his other interrogations or interviews. It would have opened the door for probably the tip narrative from Doolin.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of the things we really want to hear.
True enough.
Um, but I think it would have been at least a half day hearing. Just that motion. So I was not surprised at all to see them withdraw it so that they can refile it later.
I agree.
So when you left court the first day, what was your takeaway? Like, what was your where was your headspace? What were you thinking? Who do you think did better? Like,
Well, like you said, it wasn't a showstopper day.
no.
And I had been to the other hearings, so I knew. I mean, I didn't have the razzle dazzle with Baldwin that you did, but I've seen him do the razzle dazzle. I've seen him. I kind of have this, comparison because I thought he did one hell of a job at the dismissal hearing, although it was boring because of, all of the testimony from Click and everything, but I thought his presentation was very good. He was very on point and he had his A game. I saw him as disheveled at this particular.
His shirt wasn't tucked in.
Well,
second day or third day.
we have it in our notes. I'm sure of it.
And let me be very clear. I did not imprint on Andrew Baldwin. It's not like I'm
Yeah.
It's not like I'm applying for my internship at the
he has more to offer, and I'm wondering if it's because of how you feel about Rosie that makes it.
Look at you trying to I've never said a word about Rosie.
I know you haven't.
He was
We'll get
shorter
it.
than I thought.
No,
I will say that I thought there was definitely a very kind of charming aspect to Andrew Baldwin, and that's not something I expected. I think he definitely has a little bit of a shtick when it comes to his style, but I think it connects with people.
Yeah.
In a way that comes off more personable than some others.
Okay, I can agree with that.
It's not the impression that I had of him going into the into the hearings. So, I was pleasantly surprised by, I kind of got the the positive attention that he's been given by some people. Like, I could get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even if I don't agree with
people
him.
skills. There's no doubt about it. He connects one-on-one with people.
Right. He's the one at that table I would want to sit down and maybe hang out in a hotel lobby with and have a beer or two.
Yeah. Yeah.
With a whole cast of characters.
Well, that you would be guaranteed to have.
So no, I mean, you kind of just walked away day one
I was excited for what was to come.
Same. That was, I was glad that, we got to experience that, but I was really looking forward to the stuff that was to come.
Yep. That's basically it. That was it. And hopefully that will be your audience for for our next review of day 2.
Yes.
And then day 3, I don't know. We're gonna have to break that one up because that was massive.
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone, like I said, once we click this off, we can all answer questions and comment and talk. And if you did like this, we'll do another. If you didn't, let us know and tell us to go F ourselves and
don't blame us. Do not blame us for the topics covered at court on day 1.
And if it's me you don't like, Turbo has a channel. You can just go to her channel. And if it's Turbo you don't like, then I can just get Susan Hendrick to come on tomorrow.
Oh, ouch!
I'm just kidding.
I would gladly pass over my seat just for you to have Susan on.
I'm only allowed to do YouTube streams with Canadians. I can't get rid of you people. And in fact, I keep getting more and more of you.
Well, wait. What about the ketchup chips?
Oh, thank you very much.
Have you eaten them?
So, I've opened the first bag. Yeah. Turbo is one of the only people that knew I was going to Indiana, and the only reason that she knew was because when I was going in May, she had bought ketchup chips to bring me, and then when the hearings got canceled, Turbo was literally at the border of the United States and turned around and went home, to where she lives in Canada. And I've been waiting for 3 months now for my ketchup chips.
That's not the original bags. You didn't. I promise you didn't get the original bags.
So when I said no one knew I was going to Indiana, I mean literally. I think you and two other people knew. That was it. I know. And that was, I didn't tell you until like a couple days before. So you never know when I'll pop up and where.
I know, it's scary.
But anyway, we will see you in the chat in just a minute. So thank you guys for listening to us ramble, and now
Okay.
listen to us ramble for a little bit longer.
Okay. Thanks, Aspen.
Thank you, Turbo. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Bye.
That's not surprising. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.